So this is some more Frankenstein pack work. This is the lithium OEM pack sort of mounting assembly. I've removed it all from the lithium pack and split the pack down because I wanted to look at the wiring and see what was going where and get a bit more of an idea about how the lithium setup was assembled, etc., compared to the nickel metal hydride. So for instance, we've got the phase current sensors here. This is the nickel metal hydride and this is the lithium. Now what I'm going to do is actually I'm going to check the outputs of these, and if they're the same I may well be able to use the lithium phase sensors, but it doesn't matter particularly. This is the lithium DC to DC. We know this works up to 192 volts. That's like 40 volts higher than the nickel metal hydride DC to DC, so I could use that instead of the HCH2 DC to DC if I wanted to. And the HCH2 DC to DC gets me to 220 volts, so I may go with that, but it depends. What I might do is I might use that assembly here, bolt all the lithium stuff in it, and then just add the nickel metal hydride control. So I haven't quite decided yet. Anyway, looking at some more lithium stuff here. This is the lithium contactor, pre-contactor and main contactor assembly. So that's quite a nice, neat little unit there. If you compare that with the nickel metal hydride contactor and switch unit, that's obviously a lot bigger than the little lithium one there, and it's also higher rated. The contactor is bigger. The main contactor on this one is certainly bigger, meatier than the one on the nickel metal hydride. So again, if I'm pushing to the extreme, probably makes sense to use this. Again, what I'll have to do is I'll have to quantify this current sensor here to see if it's the same sort of output as that one. If it is, then I can just use the output and feed it straight into the nickel metal hydride motor control module, BCM, whatever you want to call it. So that's that, and then we've got the on here we have the switch and fuse for the nickel metal hydride. It's 120A 5 amp fuse, nickel metal hydride. This is the lithium assembly, and the fuse is in here, and it's actually 150 amp fuse in the lithium. So again, it makes sense to use the lithium fuse and main switch. So again, what's probably going to happen is, if you imagine this has gone away and then instead we have the lithium switch contactors, we have the main switch here. This might actually be down on the battery somewhere. It doesn't have to be. It can be in the middle of the packs, you see, to split the packs, which is how it normally is. Then that leaves us space here for our IPU module, the MPI module, and the phase sensors, and then we have the MCF and the HCH2 DC DC. So you can see there's a bit of jiggering around to go on to decide exactly where I'm going to put things. So for instance, this is the Lithium Mpi Module. So let's imagine it's going to be on here. So it's going to be something like this, laid out, phase sensors. So you're going to get something like that. Put this out of the way. So with this setup, we have the nickel metal hydride phase sensors, we have the lithium MPI, we have the lithium bypass and main contactors, we have the nickel metal hydride MCM, we have the HCH2 DC to DC, so all that should fit on there reasonably well. And then on the batteries themselves, which will be underneath, I'll probably have the switch that'll be in the middle of the pack so that it can split the pack, and then this has the 150 amp main fuse. And again, that's quite a nice neat little module. I should be able to fit that onto the side of the pack, for instance, in an accessible position at this end of the plastic container, if you like, that this all sits in, so that you can get down there and turn it on and off without any difficulty, because there is a gap here on the car into the plastic tub. So that's where we are at the minute, just fiddling around with things, looking at what's what, disassembled the lithium pack. Interestingly, the plastic buckets, if you like, that all this sits in inside the car, they are slightly different. The lithium one is bigger than the nickel metal hydride one. So the nickel metal hydride one actually just fits inside the lithium one. It's the marginal difference, and it obviously still all fits into the standard CRZ void in the back there. So it just gives me a little tiny bit more room for the lithium cells, and as you've seen, I want to try and fit at least 100 or 120 into the space that's available, and that will be an increase of like 2.5 times the number of cells from the standard 40 cells that the CRZ lithium system uses. So that's where we are, tinkering around wiring. I did do some work on the basically the wiring. This is the wiring loom, main IMA wiring loom, and here I've been sorting out the MPI connections, because the MPI connector is different on the lithium compared to the nickel metal hydride. So I've got to splice this onto, I've got to take this connector off or use a socket on here and then splice these wires into these wires here. They're the same, so the nickel metal hydride MCM should drive the lithium MPI as we suspect. Then it's a question of testing the other things and seeing what's what, and this is obviously the magic box which fakes voltages and tells the MPI things are all good, and that's what we're going to be having to upgrade in due course with some different firmware to take account of the new voltages, etc. that we're looking at. So this is the standard nickel metal hydride IMA harness, and there's a socket here. It plugs in and goes off to the normal car socket. So that's where we are, tinkering away, and I'll update you in due course.